Hey y'all, today we're exposing debt collectors. Many of us have dealt with the pain of having something sent to collections. It's like consumer jail, and it freaking sucks. If you're watching this video, you might be dealing with this right now, and you're at your wit's end with all the calls and the harassment. Like, how is this legal? What I want you to know is that we do have ways to deal with these pesky collections agents so that we can rest easy. So here we go. So the first rule is to get everything in writing. Before you discuss anything with the debt collector over the phone, request that you get everything in writing up front. Debt collectors are notorious for giving out misleading information over the phone, so you want to get it in writing. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act requires debt collectors to send you a written notice within 5 days of when you were first contacted. So the notice, it should detail the name of the creditor, the amount owed, and it should inform you of your right to dispute the debt. So once you receive that notice in writing, you have 30 days to dispute that debt in writing. Okay, so the dispute letter does a few things, but one of the most important things is that it stops all the calls and harassment. And also it buys you some time to figure out how you want to approach this, whether or not you want to pay it all out, front, whether you want to, try to negotiate terms, negotiate like how much, you're willing to pay and see if they're willing to negotiate with you. It just gives you some more time to focus on how you want to go about, this debt. And again, debt collectors cannot call you or harass you until that debt is verified in writing. So the next rule is don't be afraid to file a complaint. Debt collectors are responsible for 23% of 2.68 million consumer complaints, just in general. 23%. That means that the FTC received more than 600,000 complaints from people tired of how they were treated from debt collection agencies. So if you have a complaint, go to the FTC website, click on credit or debt categories, and then click on debt collection practices. A form will appear, and then you'll be able to fill it out. You want to give them specific information, time, place, just whatever it is that your complaint is. You want to be as specific as possible. The third rule is the debt consolidation plan. So one of the things to consider before, you default on your payments and then all of a sudden you have all these collections agencies, chasing you down, is consider consolidating your debt. So there are 3 types of debt consolidation plans. A debt management program, a debt consolidation plan, and a debt settlement plan. So first you want to do is to contact a credit counseling agency, okay? Preferably a nonprofit, which will go over your expenses, your income, and then they'll help to advise you on which one of these plans will work best for you. So this will help to prevent your debt going to these collections agencies and them just, of course, harassing you constantly. This will help to prevent that. Another one of the rules is to remember is that you don't have to talk to these people. So if you don't want to talk to these people over the phone, there's an easy way to deal with this, and that is to send a cease and desist letter by certified mail that says you no longer want to be contacted by them. If they continue contacting you after that, they are in violation of the FDCPA, which puts them in trouble with the federal government. Now you want to keep a log on all of your calls and all of your letters from them. Write down the time and date that they call, write down the agency's name, and even if you can, maybe write down the actual agent's name. Keep any voicemails or letters of correspondence, keep everything, including the ones that you sent to them. Keep copies of the ones that you sent to them as well. Now, if you send a cease and desist letter, that does not mean that they won't still try to collect the debt. It just means that they won't call you to discuss it. Now, they can attempt to settle it through the courts. So you want to check the mail and see if you have a summons. If you have an attorney, refer all, calls and mail to your lawyer. Okay. Seeing as how these collections agencies can make a negative report on your credit report, causing you to have a very negative mark on your credit score, and it could cause a lot of different ripple effects in your life. You don't need to talk to these people, okay? You don't have to talk to them, so just remember that. The next rule is that it's okay to negotiate. If you want to settle matters with the collection agencies, you or your attorney can come up with a negotiation. Come up with a deal. First, see how much you can afford to pay and see if the collections agency is willing to accept that amount. That money can be sent in a lump sum payment, or it can be sent in, multiple different payments. Here's a really good tip here, okay? I'm putting on game. If possible, try to present the negotiation at the end of the month, towards the end of the month, okay? Because collections agents have deadlines and monthly goals to meet at the end of the month. They have to meet a quota. So if you get them at the end of the month, they're more likely to settle with whatever amount that you present to them, as long as it's, of course, feasible. Because they'll be desperate to reach their goals by the end of that month. If the collections agent accepts your terms, make sure you get it in writing. You have to have written proof of the amount that you're willing to pay and then what you've agreed on, how many payments or what the date is that it needs to be due, whatever terms that you've come up with in the negotiation needs to be put in writing. The next rule is that there is a statute of limitations. Creditors have a certain amount of time, 4 to 6 years in certain states. And this is to collect a debt, before that statute of limitations ends. And they can no longer get a court judgment against you or pursue any sort of legal, anything against you regarding that one debt. Now, you will still owe the money and debt collectors may still try to attempt to get it from you. Now, here's the thing to remember. If you make a payment or you agree to make a payment, you can actually restart the statute of limitations timeline. Now, the statute of limitations vary from state to state, so you want to look into that. Now, remember, never admit, whether that's on the phone or in writing, that debt is yours. Otherwise, the statute of limitations resets. The next rule is to check for fake debt collectors. A lot of people out here trying to scam, okay? And fake debt collectors use a lot of the same tactics as debt collectors do. Usually these fake collections agents are trying to collect on phantom debts, which are too old to collect on or were never proven to be valid in the first place. Okay, so they can collect on debts that are old or never were proven to be valid in the first place. These fake collection agencies, they use the same tactic as real collection agencies, but they use as databases that sell personal information. Collections agencies have been known to try and scam family members into paying off their deceased relatives' debts. In this situation, the estate is responsible for the debts. So their assets are used to pay collections first, which could affect potential inheritance, but they cannot come after a relative of the person who owed, the money, okay? They cannot do that. So to prevent being scammed by these people, the FTC recommends that you ask the caller from the collections agency to provide their name, the company's name, the street name, the street address, and the business phone number. And then you want to verify all this on your own before you speak to them again. Another rule to remember is that there's no big early payments required and there's no urgency to act. There's no deadline to act on these collections agencies. So most of these debt collectors, they get paid on commissions. So it's not unlikely that they will, try to get debtors to get them to pay a large amount of money down, right, on the debt, and to try and rush them to pay them right away, right? They may say that like a hefty initial sum is required to prevent collections fees from growing, or that it's necessary to start eliminating, your debt from your records. What they don't want you to know is that there's no such requirement. All they want to do is to get you to pay as much money up front as possible so they can inflate their own commission. They also might tell you that there's a deadline to submit your payment, and there's no such thing as a deadline. It's a complete fabrication and one that is designed for you to just help them boost up their commissions and help them. So don't feel the need to rush and pay a debt if it's in collections. Another rule to remember is that your credit is already damaged anyway. Collectors, usually they exaggerate, the effects of delinquency or non-payment. But like suggestions that your credit may suffer or that your possessions may be seized, or they're simply scare tactics that there's nothing to back them up. In fact, if your debt is already in collections, that means that your credit score already took a hit. So there's not much more that can be done other than just getting it taken off of your credit report completely, which is another topic. But don't let them, intimidate you with these scare tactics. Another rule is do not give up personal information. They'll ask you sometimes your phone number, your address. They'll ask you your bank account number, social security numbers, and things like that are completely unnecessary to give to them. What they'll say is that they need this information to help to create like a financial statement for you or whatever. What they don't want you to know is that they're wanting to get this information from you so that they can find you in case you move, or they can sue you if you don't repay, or even get into your bank records. So there is no financial statement here. They don't need this information, and you should never give your information to anyone ever. Another thing to remember is that collections cannot cross state lines. They don't want you to know that they cannot pursue you across state borders to enforce a judgment levied against you for a creditor who sued you for non-payment and won. They're not going to transfer it from state lines because it's very time consuming and inexpensive. But just know that they cannot cross state lines. Also, remember, another rule is that there are limits to garnishment. So they don't want you to know that there's a limit to how much they can garnish from your income. For example, the maximum amount that can be taken from a paycheck is the lesser of 25% of your disposable earnings or the amount by which your wages exceed 30 times the federal minimum wage. You can also file for a complete exemption from wage garnishment if you can verify that doing so will cause your family financial hardship to have any monies withheld. Okay, so you can actually file for an exemption from that as well. So they don't have to garnish you. There's a way to protect yourself against that. Next rule is that there are options for student loan debt. Debt collectors don't want you to know this, but if you have student loan debt, while it must be paid, you have the right under the 1992 Higher Education Act to set up a short-term payment schedule with the collections agency, requiring only reasonable and affordable payments, sometimes as little as $10 a month. Successful completion of the student loan rehabilitation program, which is basically making 9 out of 10 payments on time, takes the debt out of the collector's portfolio and then sends it back to the Department of Education. So the collection agency basically loses its commissions and bounties regarding that debt, and now your loan is being held under more favorable conditions. Remember, these people are trying to bully you and they're trying to scare you because they're trying to get their commissions. You have rights. You have the ability to protect your own income. Let me know in the comments if you're having to deal with collections agencies harassing you constantly. What is something that you've dealt with? Thank you for watching. If you want to subscribe to join the Tea Party, subscribe, help your girl out. And until next time, y'all, bye.